Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grayman. We're going to be answering some questions about OCD. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. If you have a question that you would like me to answer on the next show, please leave it below any of the videos and let's get started. So the first question I have is, can you talk about eating disorders and OCD? I have both and I'm not sure which one to treat first. When one gets better, the other gets worse. Which one came first? What should I focus on? So I'm not an expert in eating disorders. I'm an expert in OCD. So it's hard for me to talk about eating disorders because honestly, I don't know much about it. What I would suggest is applying the same techniques that you are applying to OCD to the eating disorder, meaning doing exposure and response prevention. So when you are exposed to something you fear, like in OCD, right? You have to prevent the response of fear, right? When you are exposed to food, right? Again, preventing the response of, depending on what type of eating disorder you have, right? Not eating or whatever. So, yes, I want to say, for example, not eat, but I am going to choose to eat instead, right? So, you have what you feel like you want to do, and then there's what you should do, right? For to recover. And same with OCD. The thought feels real. You feel like you need to seek reassurance. You feel like you need to avoid, but you're not going to do that because that's not the right thing to do in terms of recovery. And if you're new to this channel and if you're new to anything I'm talking about, please look at the other videos, and it describes the whole process of OCD and why it's bad to seek reassurance and all of that. I just can't go over and over and over again in every show, but that's what you need to do is you have the exposure. Having the exposure is not bad because in order to recover, you need to expose your mind to these situations, right? So you have the exposure and you're refusing the response of fear. And as you do this, what you're going to see is that the mind sends less and less of these thoughts. So it works for OCD, it works for any kind of situation in real life, right? So, say, for example, if a person is getting really kind of worked up about, say, finances, for example, right? And every time they get reminded about their finances, they react. So, by choosing not to react, the brain loses that connection between, oh, finances means fear, or food means fear, or whatever is triggering you for OCD means fear, right? So by refusing to pay attention to it, you're actually getting rid of it. And again, I'm not an expert at all on eating disorders, but I would think that if you want to try to approach it the same way as you would approach OCD, I think that you would get results. In terms of which one to do first, which one to work on first, I think you have to work on them simultaneously. So treating it all as, this is not how I want to live my life. So my mind can tell me whatever it wants. It can send me whatever kind of fear it wants. I am going to do this and I'm going to do that. So you're focusing on the two areas the way you want to be. So in terms of beating the eating disorder and also in terms of beating OCD. So the next question I have is, when I ask people if I ever get through OCD, some reply, I don't know if you will ever get through it, but you can keep it under control and stuff like that. It makes me very uncertain about OCD recovery in general. I really do have a full confidence in you, Ali. Do not get me wrong, but having mixed responses makes me very uncertain. Okay, so the reason why people say this, and the reason why I say this as well, is because if you have two people who have exact same OCD, just for an example purposes, okay? They have exact same OCD. One person keeps seeking reassurance and keeps getting scared, keeps paying attention to the thought, keeps trying to research, keeps trying to figure it out. The other person says, no matter how much it hurts, no matter how real it feels, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to react. I'm not going to pay attention. I'm not going to fuel it in any way. These two people who started out having the exact same disorder with the exact same level of anxiety, with the exact same thoughts, will have a very different recovery. Now, it doesn't mean that the first person will not recover. It means that they need to get it together in order to recover. So until they stop seeking reassurance, until they stop reacting with fear, they're not on the road to recovery when they're doing those things. If they're doing them more than 50% of the time, they're not on the road to the recovery. So in order to start recovery, you first need to get on the road to recovery. Do you know what I mean? If you're, say, for example, if 90% of the time you're seeking reassurance, I don't mean specifically you, I'm just mean like people in general, right? If they're seeking reassurance 90% of the time and 10% of the time they're refusing, well, that's not recovery. I mean, it's kind of steps towards the road of recovery, and everybody starts out that way. I mean, we all started out on those first few steps, right? Because it's so scary in the beginning, but it depends on the level of determination that you have. But at the same time, are both of those people going to recover at some point? Yes, they're both going to recover at some point, as long as both of them are trying. And the second person, obviously, they're going to recover really fast because they're going through it, they're teaching their mind a lot faster. So basically, it depends on how well you teach your mind. If you're trying to teach your mind and half the time you're confusing your mind, your road to recovery is going to be a lot slower than somebody who is just on it all the time, going through it, just kind of like a tank going through the desert. They're just moving through it. No matter what's happening, they're moving through it. So you have to really get tough with this, because the more you kind of go back and forth, the longer your recovery period will be. And recovery can range anywhere from a few months to years and years. And the good thing about it is it all depends on you. It doesn't depend on anybody else. Not me, not your therapist, not any of your friends or family, nobody. It only depends on what you are doing when you get those thoughts. The more you react, the worse you're going to get. The worse you're getting, the further away from recovery you become. And that's why, people who say, I don't know, is because they don't know how you're going to do in that process. Are you person number one? Are you person number two? Are you somewhere in between? If you're in between, which person are you more like? Right? And then also, people change as they go through recovery, right? So, in the beginning, they might have been more like the person number one, but as they, got strength, they became more like the person number two. That's kind of what happened to me. So that's why you're getting that. And don't let it discourage you. Don't let it confuse you. It really depends on you. That's all that they're trying to say. Don't even waste your time thinking about this. Only worry about the recovery. If you only worry about the recovery and staying on the road to recovery, you will recover. So the next question I have is, I'm currently stuck with one compulsion, and to get rid of it, I have to do it one last time, and no matter what I do, I keep going it over and over and over until I get miserable. I believe that if I don't do this compulsion in a perfect way, then I will never be able to get rid of this compulsion, which is a bad habit. So how can I stop doing this and move on with my life? And again, it comes down to just choosing to go through it. So no matter what it's telling you, not believing it. If you cannot fully stop the compulsion, try to cut it down to at least a little bit, okay? So do it in an imperfect way. Maybe delay it. So I'm not going to do it now. I'm going to do it slightly later, even if it's a few minutes later, whatever you can handle. And that's going to be your starting point. So that's, how we're just talking about going on the road of recovery, right? So going from that to more and more and more. Because if you look on, in terms of OCD recovery, you can look at the road of recovery as your entire OCD disorder, right? And also these little roads of recovering from specific compulsion. So in practical terms, what you want to do is you want to make a plan. So this is my compulsion. What can I do to make it better? So what can I do to recover from it? What little step I can take? Because this seems to be the main one for you, the one that you're scared of the most, right? And if anybody else in the same situation, which I'm sure a lot of people are, where something is just too scary to handle all at once, right? You want to handle it in the small ways. So, okay, what is the kind of little way I can reduce the compulsion. Maybe I can delay just a few minutes. Maybe I can do a little bit less of it. Maybe I can just change it up a little bit where it's not exactly perfect how OCD wants me to do it, and then continuing from there. And the more you do it, the better you will get at it. Okay, so the next question is, hi Ali, sometimes I'm terrified with my false memory OCD. It's ruining my happiness and my good mood. What can I do? I'm starting to become angry and rude in my relationships. Well, first of all, feeling angry and being rude when you have OCD is actually quite normal, because what happens is you're trying to actively solve the thought, you're trying to figure it out, you're thinking about it, and then there's people that are, around trying to interrupt you, not being helpful and helping you solve it, maybe all of these things, and they could do, they can cause anger. But you have to remember that what everybody around you is doing, like this is in terms of relationships, right? That what everybody around you is doing is normal. And what you're doing is OCD in terms of like thinking about the thought, analyzing, and all of that. So that's where those feelings are coming from. And yet, I'm just going kind of by what majority of people experience. But your situation might be different. You didn't explain, so I don't know. But generally, that's what it is. So all of these things will fall away once you stop seeking reassurance. And it sounds to me, usually with false memory, people seek reassurance from within, meaning they try to figure out if the situation happened, go back mentally and ruminate. Well, how did it go? What was it? And just going over and over and over the situation. And when people are distracting you, it's actually a good thing. Go with that distraction. You don't want to give energy to trying to figure out the thought. The reason why it's ruining your happiness and good mood is because you're actively powering it up. So it's, yes, you're going to have anxiety for a little while when you stop powering it up. You're going to actually have a little more anxiety because your brain will want you to continue to react with fear. So when you actively refuse to react with fear, your brain's going to be like, why aren't you reacting? This is dangerous. You have to react again, and it's going to try to send you more of these thoughts. It's a protective mechanism. It's an automatic protective mechanism. Your brain doesn't know that it's sending you a false memory. It doesn't understand what the thought is about, what kind of danger it presents to you. It doesn't understand any of it. It just understands that you keep reacting to this, so it keeps sending it to you. So you need to stop the process, because your mind, because it works on autopilot, it can't stop the process by itself. It needs you to tell it to stop, but in a clear way, right? Like what I was saying in the first question, where you can't do this 50-50 stuff. You have to be strong and get a high average going of refusing the thought, at least, like I say, 80% of the time. Because you have to teach your brain the right thing. If you one day you're teaching it this, or 1 minute you're teaching it this, the next minute you're teaching it that, it just becomes too confusing. So, and as you do this, you will start to feel better. As your mood improves, as you're getting better at handling these thoughts, the thoughts will start to fall away and your relationships will go back to normal. So you don't need to worry about the relationships and the anger and all of that. That's going to fall away. Your job is to focus on not reacting. Everything else will work itself out if you do this part. And then if you don't do this part, nothing will work itself out, because you're just going to keep drowning in it. So it's very important. So next question I have is, why is that OCD is more credible than logic? It's amazing how those silly thoughts absorb and become more credible than logic. Why is this? How can we become more strong in believing logical thinking? So the reason why it's more credible is because your brain is viewing it as dangerous, and it's putting the fact that it's dangerous in front of everything else. And the only way it can get you to react is by sending you feelings along with the thought. Because if you wouldn't get feelings, if you wouldn't get anxiety, you wouldn't even react to the thought, right? So your brain is sending you anxiety and wanting you to do reassurance. That's why it's so hard to go against it, right? But it's your job is not to do it, because the brain, again, it's doing it on autopilot. So there's no way for your mind to switch itself. You need to switch your mind, and then you will start to go back to how you were before you got OCD. The next question I have is, I have heard you say that it's important to get all the information that we can about OCD, specifically pure O. However, lately I have just received information from your videos, articles, and so on, and I'm afraid to Google OCD information in case I get too confused. I do have some books on OCD, but they have not been as helpful as your information. Well, thank you. Is there other information that you would recommend, books, YouTube channels, and so on? To be honest, I think at this point you're doing it for reassurance, because a lot of the times the person will start out trying to figure out if they're having what is OCD first, right? So they're trying to research OCD and really understanding what the disorder is all about, but then it becomes more of a reassurance. The person is trying to figure out if their specific thought of the day is an OCD thought, and that becomes counterproductive. So from the sounds of it, it seems like you already have other books besides mine on OCD. So it's, you obviously have all of my information as well. So it seems like you already know enough. Now it's all about doing the work. So I would say don't put any more effort in learning about OCD, but instead put work into doing. And then as you are doing the work and questions come up, then research those specific questions. But again, research them from a position of power, that you want to know about OCD, not that you are scared and you're desperately trying to figure out if the thought is an OCD thought or not, because that's counterproductive. So the next question I have is, hi Ali, I always get this urge that if the thought or emotion is in me, I need to get this out. And this argument seems to be very real every time. Please suggest to me how to deal with this. So the way you deal with this is the same as with any other type of OCD, right? Is that you have the thought, you have the urge to try to figure it out, to get it out, to fix it, to get reassurance, whatever. But you refuse to do it because it's an OCD thought. So the urge, the feeling, the anxiety, all of that is there, but you are living parallel to it. It wants you to do a certain thing. You're doing what you want to do, not what OCD wants you to do. Because the more you focus on these emotions and the more you focus on these thoughts, the more real and more important and more all-encompassing they seem. So instead, what you want to do is you want to focus on your real life, and the more you focus on the reality, the less these thoughts will make sense, the less real they will seem, because your mind will start to pull away from it. So even though you feel the urge, you feel the thought is in you, you're still not reacting. And to answer some more questions, if you feel like your thought is coming with an urge or with a feeling of, I feel like I'm curious about something or whatever, just again, not reacting to it, not doing what OCD wants you to do. Instead, say, this is my OCD thought. I don't care about it. I'm not taking it seriously. I'm not researching online. I'm not paying attention. I'm not doing anything to keep this thought going, because the more you dive into it, the worse you are making it for yourself. You will not recover this way. In order to recover, you need to stop looking online. You need to stop researching. You need to stop seeking reassurance. You need to get over all of these things. And it just takes dedication and just working hard at it. That yes, you feel bad. Yes, you feel a lot of anxiety, like you need to react, but you are refusing to do it. Because the more you dive into all of this, the worse it will be. So another question I have is, hi Ali, would posting on an online forum on OCD or constantly messaging friends who know what you're going through about your symptoms and what constantly going on in your head be considered compulsions? Yes, that is definitely a compulsion. That is probably the most common type of a compulsion. And it's very detrimental to your recovery, because basically compulsion is kind of a way to seek reassurance, right? Reassurance and compulsion is the same thing. So you're trying to figure out if the thought is real by figuring it out. And to be honest with you guys, the online forum thing is not really productive. I would say 99% of the time, because most of the time these forums are not well moderated. And I was thinking of starting my own forum as well, but you have to heavily moderate the forum, because more often than not, it just goes down to reassurance, like multiple people reassuring one another, and it doesn't help. So instead of working on a problem of OCD, they're working on solving one thought after another, after another, after another. So it becomes counterproductive. So I wouldn't post on the forums. I wouldn't talk to anybody about it. And I know you do want to let it out. You don't want to have this private hell that you're stuck in, just going on in your head without letting it out. But really, nobody can help you besides yourself. So yes, you can talk to them about it, like to your friends or your family, but they can't help you. They're not skilled in OCD recovery to help you. So the best thing they can do is offer you reassurance, and that will just get you deeper in. And you also probably heard me talk about this before, that it never helps relationships to talk about OCD. It helps the person who's suffering, but it doesn't help the relationship as a whole, because the other person starts to feel helpless. They can't help the person suffering with OCD. Also, after a while, they start to feel annoyed. They start to feel just overwhelmed generally, and they start to become unhappy, because whether it's your friends, your family, your partner, it's hard to be around the person who's not well, I mean, it's one of those things where you can say, well, they should support me and all of that, but it really is difficult for them. So I would say, really, just not bringing up OCD at all, because it's not benefiting you, it's not benefiting them, it's not benefiting the relationship. So what is the point of doing this? So I would say, the less you talk about it, the better. So next question I have is about theme switching. So the person says, I've had my main theme for a good few months now. Recently changed to a different theme, but now has gone back to the first one. Is this normal? And how can I further my recovery when this happens? Themes usually switch when you stop paying attention to it, which means you're working on recovery, which is very, very, very good. Now, the reason why it's going back to it is because at some point you started to take it seriously. So you stopped taking the theme seriously, it switched to another theme, you were taking that one seriously, then you overcame that one and it went back to the first because you started to react to the first again. So both of these themes are your themes. So stop reacting to both of these and you will start to feel better. No matter what it is, if it has to do with your theme, you're not reacting, you're not analyzing, you're not researching, you're not asking people, you're not avoiding, you're not getting reassurance. Nothing. Zero reaction. And as you do this, both of these themes are going to go away. And yeah, it's pretty normal. I mean, this is really what happens when people recover from OCD. It's just part of the process. And I have another question. It's not really a question, it's kind of like a message. The person says, thank you, I subscribed to your channel a month ago. I feel very encouraged knowing that there is no chance of failure if you work on it. And this is such a great way of putting it, that exactly, there is no chance in failure if you work on your recovery. If you work on it, if you put in the work, if you are doing everything you can do to not seek reassurance, not avoid, not pay attention to the thoughts, live your life parallel to it, there is no way you can fail at this. Some people go faster, some people go slower, but you will recover because you're progressively not reacting. But I mean, again, just like I said in one of the first questions I answered, right? That it has to be at least 80 or 70%. So try to get to that average. It might not work right away. You might start out with very, very low percent, but you need to see progression, that you're slowly, climbing up to those percentage points. Because if you're, doing 50-50, it doesn't work. But the more you try, the better you get at it. So again, no chance of failure if you keep working on it. And I really want you to take it to heart that it is up to you. You can recover from this if you work at it. You just need to keep powering through and you will recover. So we've come to the end of the show. If you have any more questions, please visit youhaveocd.com. There's a private recovery program there with me. There's ebooks, there's information on recovery, there's lots of information on there. There's also audiobook rentals available through this channel. If you haven't subscribed yet, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.